Hi, I'm Jill Foster, designer for Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft, and today I'll be sharing several tips and techniques using the Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils in the neutral pack. And we'll be doing a lot of mix and matching with our other products. So to begin, I'm going to create 3 ATC sized pieces, and I'm working on a matte board from Inchy Arts that is the ATC size. And I went ahead and stamped my images using the Stamper's Big Brush pen in black and stamped that on there in advance. And I'm going to start by coloring with the neutral Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils. And I'm just going to color around the outside edge of this heart. These pencils are great. They have a triangular barrel, so as you're working and you lay them on your work surface, they don't roll around. And this first step when I'm coloring, I just am scribble coloring it on. It doesn't matter how it looks, we're just getting the pigments onto the piece. But I am coloring the areas where I want it to be the darkest, so that's where I am laying down the color. And I'm using just here a variety of colors from that neutral pack. Now when I add the water, I first put down the water in the white open area and then work my way up to the areas that I've colored. And what this does is it's just a simple way to blend. So you're starting on that white area, and when you move up into the pigment, the water does all of the work and the colors just sort of bleed into that open area. And you keep that nice light airy white space where you want it to be the lightest, and the area where you put down the color remains darker. And what I love about watercolor is when you get that real uneven look and it puddles up, and it just gives you that great dimension on your piece. So I will move on, and I'm just continuing to wet this down and work into the areas that I've colored. Just grabbed a smaller brush here for these smaller areas. And you'll see that those neutral colors from the Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils just instantly turn to paint when water is applied. Now I'm using another pencil from that pack to color around the outside of the image. And this just adds great dimension to the piece as well, because you're giving like a shadow behind it, almost makes it look like it's popping up off the surface. So same thing, just scribble down the color. I'm going to take a fairly large brush now, put the water down in the white area first, and then work my way up to the area that I've colored, and just naturally let that bleed out and blend on its own. We'll do that here around the top as well. And I like working on these art squares as you can add lots and lots of water and they don't warp at all. And you can easily add these to a front of a card and a scrapbook page, however you would like to use them. Next, I'm going to mix and match with more neutral products from the Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft line. So here I'm just using a pastel pencil, a Pitt Pastel, in black, coloring right around just a few parts of that image, and then quickly blending that with my finger just to add even more depth right behind the edge of that heart. And it layers nicely on the part that we've already painted. So next I'm taking a stamp and another neutral marker, and this is actually the Stamper's Big Brush pen in the color of warm gray. I just colored right onto my stamp, and then I'm stamping right on top of that piece. And then for the last step here, I'm using the white Big Stamper's pen, and I'm just lightening up just a few areas by coloring and then blending it with my fingertip. So you can always go back and lighten up your coloring and add those highlights later. If some of the watercolor pencil gets on the tip of the marker, just color on a piece of scratch paper and it will remove it. And here's another look at that finished ATC. So for this next ATC, I wanted to show you how you can blend and mix and match with the other Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils. So the neutrals, by coloring them here on the grass and sort of those wheat pieces of this stamp, when I add the color on the flowers, they really pop when they're paired with the neutrals. So the neutral pack of Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils mixes and matches with all of the colored Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils. So to start again, I'm just essentially scribble coloring that color onto the piece, getting those pigments down. I'm using a variety of different colors here from that neutral pack. And then next I'll take just a paintbrush and water and blend those. And because this is so small, essentially I'm just putting water on there and kind of scribbling with the paintbrush just to get it wet and give it that watercolor look. I'm not worried at all about staying in the lines, just want that color down. So I want to dry that before I go on to the next step. And now I'm taking one of the Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils from the red pack and mixing and matching it with the neutrals. And you see how that color just pops. Coloring it where I want the color to be the darkest, then taking my paintbrush with water, starting on the white area and then working down into the color and letting the water do the work. And same thing up here on these petals. And then finally, you can also add a pop of color using your gelatos. So I just colored that cotton candy gelato along the top, and then I'm using that just like I did with the Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils, adding water to the white area and then working up into the gelato. And I did decide here as well to add some of the chocolate gelato to the bottom just to darken that up a bit. And this time I just colored it on and blended it with my fingertip. And if you want to remove any, if you like some of that pink bled, I just use a baby wipe to wipe that up. Now on this final ATC, I'm going to be mixing and matching lots of different mediums with the neutral Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencil. So there's lots and lots of layers. To start, I'm coloring onto my stamp with the Stamper's Big Brush pen in dark chrome yellow. Once I've got that colored, I will lightly mist it with water. I am working fairly quickly because once the India ink of the Stamper's Big Brush pens dries, it is permanent. So I do like to get it colored on there and stamped before it starts to dry. And then I'm going to switch stamps. And this one I'm coloring with the Pink Madder Lake, and then I'll lightly mist it before stamping. All of the stamps I'm using today are by Penny Black. So working quickly, misting, and then stamping onto the art square. And I wanted to add just a touch of this on the bottom again, so I'm just really quickly coloring on that again with the marker, a quick mist, and stamping again along the bottom. Now for my next layer, once that was dry, I'm using the neutral Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils and just adding some shading. So you can color right on top of the Stamper's Big Brush pen once it's dry and add shading. And because that India ink is permanent once dry, when I add the water to these watercolor pencils, the stamping beneath is not going to bleed at all. It's one of the benefits of layering these these products together. So you can see here I'm adding the water with a small paintbrush. That's blending the color, but the yellow stamping beneath remains. Here I'm using another neutral Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencil, and then I'll go back and blend that with the paintbrush, and I'll continue to do that on that entire fern. So here I've grabbed an Art Grip colored pencil, and this has the gray barrel. So always remember the blue barrels are blue like water, and they're the watercolor pencils. This is the colored pencil, and I just added some additional shading with that, and the same thing here. I'm using another Art Grip colored pencil to add a little additional shading on top. Just picking a few of the leaves and coloring them darker. And you'll notice that the color of the Art Grip colored pencil matches the color of the Stampers' Big Brush pen that we originally colored with. Now this is a butterscotch gelato. I'm just coloring it on the bottom and the top and blending with my fingertip just for a little bit of extra dimension. And then to add some additional texture and one more layer of mix and matching, I'm coloring with the black Stampers' Big Brush pen onto a script background and stamping it onto the art square. Well, here's another look at the entire set, and I hope you're inspired to get out your Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft products and do some mix and matching.